Hey, folks, let's make sure we got sound. I see sound bouncing around, so we should be good there. Looks like we've got video. Hey, welcome. I hope you had a great weekend. I don't know if it was a 3-day weekend for you or not. Let's face it, a lot of you have to work weekends and holidays and so forth because that's the nature of being a student. I get that. My son had to work over the weekend, but yeah, I hope you were able to do something. We did a barbecue, and like I said in the comments, I moved a ton of dirt. Oh my gosh. We're filling a trampoline hole, and trampoline hole holds a lot of dirt. I of course dug this hole out years ago, and so I feel like Cool Hand Luke, digging the hole, filling the hole, digging the hole, filling the hole. If you don't know Cool Hand Luke, watch the movie sometime. Great movie. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to come on over here. We're going to talk about business during the Renaissance and so forth, Middle Ages. Actually, not the Renaissance. Strike that. Middle Ages, okay? Clean the house. You know what? That's a worthy effort. I like cleaning. I'm kind of weird that way. Anyway, we're talking Middle Ages. Now, most of the time when we talk about Middle Ages, I shouldn't say we, and I shouldn't say most because I don't know. Often, it has been my experience that when we discuss the Middle Ages, we're discussing Europe and the Dark Ages and all that sort of stuff. Well, you know what? It wasn't as dark and bleak as you might think. In fact, if we were talking about the Middle East and so forth, there was like the most amazing time in the world during the Middle Ages. And we're going to be talking about Vikings. But now remember, I've told you, this isn't a history class. We are talking about where certain concepts of business started. What was the beginning, the nascence of these ideas of business that we kind of hold as normal today? And so what we're going to do is we're going to cover a few readings, a couple of readings, of course. And the first one here is by Thorsten Veblen. I'm going to make the case to you that Amazon, they're nothing special. They're nothing special at all. In fact, what the Vikings were doing during the 13th century or so was exactly what Amazon is doing. So, no, Amazon is nothing special, and I'm going to show you that today, okay? So let's go ahead and play with this idea a little bit. To start with, we're going to start getting some light bulbs here, okay? Here's a question I have for you, all right? Here's the question. Get ready to type up and give it some thought, all right? You, and it just so happens somebody else. So 2 people in class, two of you had this weird idea separately, right? 2 of you in class, you're trying to introduce the idea of makeup for dogs. Okay, that's the idea. You had this idea of starting a company that sells makeup for dogs. And it just so happens that somebody over there had the same idea of makeup for dogs. What can you do to get the word out about this product and grow your business? That's the question. Now, remember, there is no market for makeup for dogs. You have to create this market. So you, and it just so happens somebody else, came up with the idea. You're each starting your own company. How are you going to get the word out about the dogs? About the dog make? Now, social media, absolutely. Marketing and word of mouth, yes. These all make very good sense. But what else can you do? Business cards and flyers. I like it. Sure. There's something that we don't often think about, though. Free makeups. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea of free makeups. My son-in-law does dog photography right now, and he's doing a lot of free dog photography. All right? Well, here is something you can do that you may not think about. You and this other person, even though you're starting separate companies, but you and this other person can pool your resources and do all this marketing and social media and so forth. Facebook Marketplace, you can do the same there, right? You can pool your resources so that you have more ability to promote the idea of dog makeup. Here's the idea. You're not going to sell any dog makeup until people first understand the idea of dog makeup. And you will have more ability to promote the idea by working together. And then once the idea is really promoted and so forth, then you can compete and so on. But now you're competing for a market that actually exists instead of competing for a market that doesn't exist. Does that make sense? Ambassadors such as influencers. Yeah, that's a good one. Totally. Okay, so with that, we're going to talk about syndicates. Now, don't worry, this whole dog makeup thing is going to make sense. You're going to kind of see there's a little syndicate here that I would recommend that you and the other person do. Let's first look at the definition, this little text right here. All right, let's pull that up a little bit. Syndicates, when organizations work together to conduct some type of business in order to pursue and promote their collective interests. Okay, so if you and this other company, this other person, work together to promote your mutual interest, your collective interest, which is create a market for dog makeup, you have formed something of a syndicate. Now, you should know, guys, gals, actually in today's vernacular, guys refers to gals too, but I'm old. Anyway, syndicates tend to be spoken of in illegal terms, right? In economic terms, a formal syndicate is illegal. So you're talking about drug syndicates and you're talking about crime syndicates. OPEC, the Organization of Oil Producing Countries, that is a syndicate and is technically by U.S. law illegal, but they don't care. They're in the Middle East. They have their own laws. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, I want you to let go of that idea of illegal and illicit. All we are talking about right now is companies and individuals getting together to promote their collective interest. So as it says in the reading here, the early combinations, a combination is an organization, okay? Combination, organization. The early combinations were relatively small and transient. Transient meaning temporary. Now, don't worry, this is going somewhere very modern. The early combinations, organizations were relatively small and transient, temporary. They took the form of gentlemen's agreements, pools, work arrangements, division of territory, etc., rather than hard and fast syndicates. Okay, well, Lon, you keep saying this is going to be relevant to us. Well, how about an Amazon Flex driver? Okay, so and this is a little ad for Amazon, right? Flex driving and so forth. Start earning with Amazon Flex. What's Amazon Flex? Well, Amazon Flex is when you use your car. You're a private contractor for Amazon. So like during the Christmas season, when Amazon is all over the place, have you ever had a package delivered to your home, but it was delivered out of some person's private car, just a car, and they weren't even in a uniform? That is an Amazon Flex driver. So this is kind of a, temporary seasonal thing. As it says from the reading, in those early days, a combine would be formed for a seasonal work, between two or more capitalist undertakers, entrepreneurs, companies, for the most part employing their own capital only. So an Amazon Flex driver is a seasonal worker of their, and they're not even an employee, they're a private contractor employing their own capital, their own car, their own gas, their own insurance, their own everything. But they have this temporary, transient relationship with Amazon whereby this private contractor and Amazon can work together for their mutual interest. Okay? So we start to see this happening. All right. But now that's the informal thing, right? But now we're getting to bigger and bigger syndicates. Syndication of an increasingly close texture, meaning organizations that are more tightly knit, and increasingly permanent effect, appear to have rapidly grown in favor through the 9th and 10th centuries. The reasons for this movement of coalition are plain. The volume of the trade, as well as its territorial expansion, increased uninterruptedly. Okay, so now remember, we're talking about Vikings, but it's the same with Amazon. So yes, Amazon has their own trucks. They have their own delivery. Sure, fine. But they also work very closely with UPS and FedEx and other distributors, other delivery services. Why? Because of the amount of trade and the growth and all of that. So even with Amazon, as it was with the early Vikings, they are having to kind of work together with many, many, many companies to deliver their goods and services, okay? And so this is where we see syndicates forming. Now, again, don't get hung up with the word syndicate because today it means illicit and so forth, but this is just a distribution supply chain. It's a form of organization. Okay. Now, in the beginning with the Vikings, there was a quasi-voluntary coalition forces known as a trust. Okay, so let's first define trust so that we know what that means, and then we'll dig deeper into this whole quasi-voluntary thing. Definition, a trust. Here, let's go ahead and make that. Oh, no, it's plenty big. A trust is a business organization, a group of businessmen or traders organized for mutual benefit to produce and distribute a specific commodity or service, all managed by a central body of trustees. Okay, so with a formal trust, we've got like a boardroom, a central body of trustees who make decisions for all of these people. Now, in the case of our FedEx and so forth, this is not a trust because there is no central body that makes decisions for all of these companies, okay? Each one of these companies is acting in their own self-interest. It just so happens that they can do so if they do so cooperatively, okay? However, when it comes to a trust, one group is making the decisions, and it affects everyone. Also, when we talk about quasi-voluntary, well, it means you were invited to volunteer or you would be destroyed, right? You're either gonna volunteer to participate in this trust, or we're gonna wipe you off the face of the map, as Vikings do. Okay, quasi-voluntary. That's what that means. So, does that have any elements today? Well, yeah. Long ago, my father had a friend who made really nice furniture, but was really having a hard time getting it off the ground, getting this business off the ground. And he could meet his costs and so forth, but he only made a little bit. And Walmart came along, and Walmart said, "We would like to carry your line of furniture." Now, you would think that would be the greatest news in the world. But Walmart makes the decisions. They set delivery schedule. They set quality standards. They set pricing. They make decisions for everyone on every facet. And the price that they were willing to pay him for the furniture and so forth, it just wouldn't be economically feasible. And so as much as he hated to, he had to say no to Walmart because there's just no way that could work. Well, if you want to put something on Amazon, if you are an Amazon seller and so forth, Amazon sets all the rules. They set all the rules hands down. And it's kind of like, hey, if you want to sell on the Amazon platform, you're going to abide by these rules. Now, it's one thing to say, well, I'm an independent contractor, an independent entrepreneur, and I want to sell my things the way I want to sell my things, and I want to set the rules and conditions and so on and so forth. And Amazon says, no, that's not the way it works. It's our way or the highway. Apple and Samsung Galaxy, whatever, they're kind of going through this right now with their App Store, okay? Some of you might know the story about Fortnite wanting to sell their upgrades and so on and so forth through other platforms, through their own platform, rather than through the, say, Apple App Store. Because in the Apple App Store, Apple gets 30% of the money, you just right off the top. And so Fortnite is like, hey, we could sell this for less, or we could make more money if we sell it ourselves versus selling it on the Apple App Store. And so they went ahead and started their own, and that very same day, Apple kicked them off of the App Store, and it's in court right now. The Galaxy, gosh, what is it? The one for Galaxy and so forth, their App Store, I'm looking at mine, the Play Store, that's it, Play Store. Yeah, I agree with you. The Play Store, wrong one, that's the one I want right there. The Play Store is actually making some deals with Fortnite right now, but Apple is still in court. So here's the point. You might say, well, it's totally voluntary. You don't have to be on the App Store. Yeah, you know what? So every single phone out there is either an iPhone or a Samsung. And so if I'm not in the App Store, or if I'm not in the Play Store for Samsung, then I can't compete in the market. Therefore, this is an example of how today participation in these things is quasi-voluntary. Sure, you don't have to sell through them, but if you don't sell through them, there is no other mechanisms. These are oligopolies. If they're not monopolies, but they're oligopolies. Okay, you're losing the market, right? Yeah. Totally take advantage of it. Totally take advantage. Okay, let's keep going. So, like any other company, and Amazon no different, and any company that you start is no different, you are going to experience several principles that really started to come to the forefront at this time. One of them is called sunk cost. Now, this is for the reading. For a business venture to get off the ground, a relatively large initial investment must be sunk. And the period of turnover, the period of production, is necessary for some duration. The risk is also considerable. So let's look at these. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get down. So first, initial investment. This is the cost incurred, which will hopefully get a return on the investment, so it'll justify the cost. So if you start a business, when I start a business, I've got Nutshell Brainery here. This takes a fairly large initial investment. Okay, so we have, now, by the way, Amazon had huge initial investments. That's they would sell it through stock or they get it through venture capitalists and so forth. Elon Musk right now is starting an AI company. He just got initial funding of $6 billion. It's in the news right now if you take a look at it. So this $6 billion, or the billions of dollars that went to Amazon, or the tens of thousands of dollars that went into Nutshell Brainery, this is your initial investment. And you'll need an initial investment as well if you start a company. But then you got to understand sunk cost. And that's what the Vikings are experiencing here. A cost that has already been incurred and which cannot be recovered to any significant degree if the business venture fails. Okay, so any money you put into the company that you cannot get back out if the company fails is a sunk cost, like a sunk ship. You're not getting it back, okay? So, for example, what have I got? Okay, I'll show you. All right, I got this lens, all right? I've got a lens here. Let's come in just a little bit closer. This is like a $1,300 lens, $1,300 for this lens. Yes, lenses actually tend to cost more than the camera itself. It's quite extraordinary. All right, so I spent $1,300 for this lens. If I had to resell it, I'd probably get $900 for it. That means that I sunk $400. I'm not getting that money back. So the company needs to succeed if I'm going to get a return on investment for this thing. Yeah, it's totally expensive. Riley, when I first started with all this YouTube stuff, I would look at the costs and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. That's obscene that it would cost that much. And it's like, yeah, it actually does. Scratched my $800 lens and they wanted to, oh my gosh. Oh, that hurts to think about. Oh, that hurts to think about. Oh man, I am sorry to hear that. Okay, so that's some cost. But then we've got ourselves, and I'm going to get smaller here, we've got ourselves period of turnover. Now, here's the idea of period of turnover. When you start a business, you are not going to start making money right away. It doesn't work like that. So you're going to invest tens of thousands of dollars, perhaps millions or billions, right? And it's going to take years and years for you to net $1. This is your period of turnover. The way I kind of like to think about period of turnover is think about if you were to start, say, like a Christmas tree farm, okay? So you're planting trees for a Christmas tree, and you've got 90 acres, 90 square acres to plant these seeds on. Okay, so you're going to plant them, right? Well, are you going to plant them all at once? No, because then they would come to fruition in 5 or 6 years all at once. And so you're only making money every 5 or 6 years. So you're going to divide this 100 acres, I'm going to say 100 acres. You're going to divide it into sections of 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. You're going to plant each one each year, right? And this way, after 5 years, you can harvest the first 20% of your land that you planted, and then replant, and then the next year harvest the next part, and so forth. These are examples of periods of turnover, okay, or the period of production. You're not making all your money all at once, and it's certainly not right after you start. So it takes some significant investment. This is sophisticated stuff. And this is what the Vikings are doing. But guys, Amazon was in business for like 15 years before it made a profit. So for 15, 20 years, I don't know how long, maybe one of you can Google it. They were operating at a loss for decades until they could finally make a profit. That is their period of production, okay? It takes time to see a return. That's exactly what we mean here, Riley. Exactly. Okay. So, continuing on. Come on. All right. Now, this is what I want to do. I want to read this section. Let's go ahead and get smaller. I want to read this section right here. There we go, right there. It is about the Vikings. This is about the Vikings. However, I maintain that the same piece here can be applied to Amazon exactly with just the change of a few words based on technologies, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and read this, and I want you to think Amazon. I don't want you to think Vikings. I want you to think Amazon. And then we're going to change certain words to make it reflect Amazon versus the Vikings. By the way, so Mary did a Google here. She Googled it. Amazon, one of today's biggest multinational companies dominating e-commerce, only turned a first profit 9 years after being founded. Okay, so it wasn't 10 or 15 years. It was 9 years. But, thank you, Mary. I think my point stands. Took 9 years to make a profit. Okay, so let's check this out. Think Amazon. For a business venture to be successful, certain technological prerequisites must be met in the way particularly of shipbuilding, navigation, and the manufacture of weapons. An adequate accumulation of capital goods must be had. Coupled with a sagacious spirit of adventure, there must also be an available supply of labor. That's the formula. Okay. So now let's look at this through the realms of Amazon. Certain technological prerequisites must be met, particularly in the way of shipbuilding. Now, is shipbuilding still applicable? I mean, what is shipbuilding to Amazon? Navigation. How does Amazon navigate? The Vikings used stars and sextants and all that sort of stuff. Manufacture of weapons. What is this to Amazon? What is the manufacture of weapons? So we'll start there. So Cassie, She points out trucks, internet, roads, it's all good, right? Trucks, airplanes, still ships. We're shipping all that crap from China, right? And so we've got ships, we've got airplanes, we've got roads, and so forth. We need these things to ship Amazon, just as in they needed these things to ship with the Vikings and so forth. And now check this out. Amazon's fulfillment centers are all next to airports. The Viking fulfillment centers were all next to seaports. It just depends on how you're bringing it in, right? Transportation of goods, raw materials. Yes, shipbuilding is now shipping to billing. That actually makes some sense. What about navigation? How do they navigate? It's still navigation. And here's the really tricky one. Manufacture of weapons. Also try to keep close to the main roads as well. Yes, they do. Yes, they do, because they want easy arteries. All right, so the way the Vikings did this, guys, the Vikings would set up shop along rivers. So all the major cities in Europe that were founded by Vikings, and there are many, 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 they were all along rivers. And this is why I say Amazon should have been called Volga, because just as in Amazon today sets up its shops along major roads and airports, the Vikings did it along seaports and rivers. Same thing. GPS, there we go, Cassie, I agree. Yes, yeah, right. 3 fulfillment centers right off there. Yes, there are. You're right. Okay, manufacture of weapons. Here's the thing. Yes, close to an airport as well. Yeah. There's the Riley, it's really funny. So out by the airport, we call it the inland port. Google Salt Lake City inland port. Inland port. And you'll see, we even call it an inland port. We still think in terms of ports. We have an airport, and then we have an inland port, because normally it would be a seaport. We still think in these ways, okay? Manufacture of weapons. Now, with the Vikings, these sods had to provide their own defense. And they had to force their own market expansion. In other words, they'd go in and conquer, right? So they had to provide for their own defense, and they had to find the means to expand into new markets on their own. So they would manufacture weapons for their defense against pirates and expanding into new markets, saying, we want to sell here and we're going to make you buy from us. Okay. They don't do that anymore. They've got 2 things that replace this. They've got governments and laws. When Amazon and other companies pay lobbyists to go to Washington and write laws and create laws that benefit them, this is analogous to the manufacture of weapons. They are ensuring that there are laws in place to protect Amazon, and they are ensuring that there are laws in place that allow them to expand into new markets. So whereas the Vikings had to do this all on their own, today we have governments and laws and global organizations in place that allow us to do this. But we still have to fund it. They don't pay taxes, but they'll pay their lobbyists. Okay. I want to do this next one. I want to talk about this last one here. A sagacious spirit of adventure. I love that. I just love that. A sagacious spirit of adventure. Sagacious means wise, as in if you play video games or board games or role-playing games, a sage is often like a magic user and so forth because sage is wise. So a sage person is a wise person. Well, sagacious, therefore, means wise. A sagacious spirit of adventure. My friends, this is an entrepreneurial spirit. That's what they're saying here. They might as well just change it to entrepreneurialism, okay? So I could reread this whole thing and say, for Amazon to be successful, certain technological prerequisites must be met, such as particularly in the way of procuring ships and airplanes and airports, navigation, governmental systems and world organizations that provide for safety and access to markets. An adequate accumulation of goods must be had, coupled with entrepreneurialism. There also must be an available supply of labor. Same dang thing. Amazon didn't invent anything. This is what the Vikings were doing, which is why Europe, in this time was starting to come out of the Dark Ages, and there's more and more business, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. Okay, let's come back over here. Let's come here, and let's come here. All right. Couple things. I'm going to go through this one fairly quickly. Two people here. I'm going to tell the story of two people. So Jeff knew about history. It's really cool, guys. Jeff Bezos and so forth. I don't know if you weren't around when Amazon started. You probably weren't around when Amazon started. But Amazon started, the first product they offered were books. Amazon sold books. That's all it was. I remember all of this very well because I was still an old person when Amazon started. And so it was a bookstore, and then added products. The reason Jeff Bezos started with books was not because he loved books, but because he just saw that as like the easiest thing to order and ship through the internet, right? So yeah, it was all calculated. I don't know if he knew history, but he certainly knew business. Knows. Okay. We're going to talk about Palnatoke and Sigvaldi. Not because I care about Palnatoke and Sigvaldi, but because I care about what they did and why we keep doing it today. And Raphael, we need people who understand history because we keep doing this stuff. Okay, so with that, let's start with Palnatoke. This guy kind of started what the reading asserts was the first corporation. The reading asserts it's the first corporation. Is it the first corporation? I don't know. But he kind of brought people together in this way, right? So we're going to read his story here. The story reads like a fanboy just gushing about somebody. It's like this endorsement sort of thing. So this thing just gushes with idol worship. We'll have some fun with that, but I want to really make sure we understand what he did and why, okay? So, as may often happen, when the irksomeness of the competitive situation was fast becoming intolerable. Now, first of all, what's this competitive situation that's quickly becoming intolerable? It's pirates, baby. Pirates. Now, yeah, I love a good pirate story like anybody else, So, that's awesome. But you got to understand, pirates were not kind of the romanticized pirates, they were all, not all, many of them were state funded. Okay? It was basically like outsourcing a navy. A country, England and France, for example. Let's take England and France. If you ever watch Master and Commander, it's between England and France. Well, England would pay English pirates to harass the French, and France would pay French pirates to harass the English. And actually, it would just be very mercenary. England would pay any pirate to harass the French, and France would pay any pirate to harass the English, right? So it was basically like buying mercenary navies, all right? Which means that if you're interested in trade, and all these countries are interested in trade, you're spending so much time and money on protection, on security, on just, you're losing a ton of stuff. I mean, there were times that only 1 out of 3 ships would make it across the Atlantic, right? Because of pirates. So you're losing a lot of money and you're spending a lot of money for no good reason. And this is the irksomeness of the competitive situation. Okay, back to the reading. Was fast becoming intolerable. There arose a man of far-seeing sagacity and settled principles, of executive ability and business-alike integrity, who saw the needs of the hour and the available remedy, and who saw at some glance his own opportunity for gain. All right, that's great, whatever. What it basically says is there's this really, really smart person who saw an opportunity to not only remedy the situation, but to make some money in the meantime. Okay. A man with mature experience, with large investment in traffic. He's already heavily invested in all of this stuff. And with a body of goodwill that gave him perhaps the most decisive advantage. He's well respected in his circles. Okay, this is Palnatoki. So we got this guy, he sees an opportunity, he thinks he knows how to solve this, and he has a lot of goodwill with a lot of the folks around him and so forth, and he has a lot invested in this, and he sees a way to make money, so he's going to do something. Well, what's he going to do? Together with ships and other equipment of such Vikings, as were admitted to fellowship, its intangible assets were its franchise and its goodwill of the promoter and the underlying companies, and its bylaws were very strict. Okay, what? All right. This is one of those cases of where when you're looking at the reading there in Canvas, highlight this and use AI to put it in English, to explain it in more certain simple terms. But I'm going to go ahead and be the AI for the moment, and I'll explain this. He brought all the Vikings together, all these kind of, riffraff factions and so forth, and said, listen, if we all work together, we can make a ton of money. We can just make a ton of money because we're not going to be losing our goods as much as we used to be losing them, and we won't be spending a ton of money fighting each other and so forth. Lawn cheapy, right? Yeah, may not be artificial. It's lawn. So we're going to make money because we're not going to lose money and we're not going to be spending it on all this security stuff. And he says, we're gonna do this all together. And we're going to exercise a lot of discipline, all right? Like Amazon does now. If you go against our buy rules, our bylaws, we're going to kick you off of Amazon. So if you have ever been an Amazon seller, you'll know that if you go against Amazon, they will kick you off so fast it'll make your head spin. And that's what Palnatoki's doing. He's saying, if we all work together, we can all make a lot of money, but we're going to set some really strict rules. Okay, going forward. Now, this neutral international corporation of piracy, they're still doing it, right? But now they're doing it to other people instead of each other. Won great prestige. In modern phase, its intangible assets grew rapidly larger. They got rich. Backed by the competitive pressure which the new corporation was able to bring into small companies and syndicates, this prestige brought a steady run of applications for admission into the trust. Okay, what did that just mean? It meant they were making a lot of money. And they were setting the rules, and they were being really successful. And so what happened is others wanted to be a part of this. Just like people want to be Amazon sellers, we now had small and medium-sized groups, companies, bands, tribes of Vikings wanting to join this trust because they were willing to give up their autonomy to do their own thing and instead follow the rules of the trust, the corporation, if it meant making more money. And this is what we do today. When, you don't have to work for the man. You can do your own thing. And you get to make your own rules. Well, the truth of the matter is, it's really hard. And so we are willing to give up a level of our autonomy to work for an organization because in so doing, we're going to make a lot more money. All right. In most cases, you can still be entrepreneurial. So as they grew, their amount of people in the trust also increased. Yes, absolutely. It became a bigger and bigger concern. Yes. Okay. So, great. So we've got ourselves this awesome little corporation going. Now comes Sigvaldi, who screws it all up. And he screws it up in ways that companies today still screw it up. As a matter of fact, Boeing is a great example of this. Now, Boeing did a lot of things to screw things up. They did an awful lot of things to screw things up. But some of the things that we see here, we can kind of see in Boeing. Back 20 years ago, stamping was a really big hobby. People would buy these stamp kits from places like Stampin' Up, and they'd go to stamping conventions and create these collage books and so on and so forth. It was a really big hobby. And Stampin' Up is an example of a company. They're still around, but I've seen them do some of this stuff as well. Tighten the screws. Okay, so let's see what Sigvaldi did. All right. The trust, moreover, being supreme within its field, meaning it was so powerful. Boeing was so powerful. It was like one of only two companies in the world that made jetliners. You have Boeing and you have Airbus. So they were certainly supreme in their field. The discipline grew lax and its exactions grew arbitrary. Okay, what do we mean by this? Its discipline grew lax. Yes, Boeing absolutely became lax in safety. They put meeting delivery schedules and making a profit ahead of safety. This isn't just lawn talking. They're already writing case studies about all this. You can research this. So meeting delivery schedules and making shareholder profits was more important than safety. So discipline grew lax. Exactions grew arbitrary. I can't say this about Boeing. I have not heard this. But exactions grew arbitrary, meaning they treated different people in different ways. They treated different companies in different ways, and there wasn't really Hollywood. Hollywood is a great example of exactions grew arbitrary. What movie is greenlit? What movie is not greenlit? What movie gets budget? What movie doesn't get budget? What movie is released? What movie isn't released? All right, Batwoman is a great example of a movie that got made and in post-production and ready to release, and they said, no, we're not going to release it. Why? Because we don't want it. This is exactions grew arbitrary. Sometimes going to unprovoked excesses. If your CEO has 3 private jets, this is an unprovoked excess. As one might say, too little thought was given to economies of production, actually making your product. And with the charges were pushed beyond what the traffic would bear, meaning there wasn't enough market for this. Okay, so we're making all this stuff and we're not doing it very efficiently, and yet we've made more than the market could ever possibly consume. And so now we're saddled with all this excess. Let's come over here. All right. So that is our wrap up of the Vikings, okay? The next reading we're going to look at kind of talks about how religion played into this a little bit. But before I get into it, we're going to do our stretch break. We've been going for 50 minutes. We're right in the middle, more or less. Let's do a break. I'm going to do like a 2-minute break or so, maybe 3 or 4. I don't know. I'm going to talk for a while. Feel free to get up and stretch. Feel free to go off and do your bio break. Feel free to go get a snack. Feel free to get a Red Bull or whatever. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you something from my shelf here. What am I going to show you? Last time we did the telephone, I'll show you this. All right. Let's come on over here. This is a big-ass camcorder, a VHS camcorder, okay? Yeah, wow, right? Back in the day, actually, this one was relatively modern, all right? Because with this one, it had a battery, all right? You had your battery, and you could go ahead and load a VHS tape somehow. I don't know how to hit the eject button. I don't use this. But you could load a VHS tape in there, had the microphone and all this sort of stuff, and all your controls right here. Used to be that you'd have something this big and the VHS tape was on this kind of like saddlebag sort of thing. But it's just incredible to me, guys. In my lifetime, I have gone from something like this being Star Trek pipe dream to this being really cool, ultra-modern technology, to this being a joke that people then ask, how much does it weigh, right? And yeah, it's probably 6 or 7 pounds. I mean, it's not light. And now, what you can do on your phone is infinitely better quality. I mean, infinitely better quality than what this thing would produce. And so, if all of that happened in the span of, say, 50 years, what are you going to see? What are you going to see in your lifetime? If we went from nothing to this, what's going to happen? It's just amazing to me. Just incredible. Every once in a while, I kind of think about actually getting this thing running and maybe shooting a YouTube video on it or something. There's a YouTube channel out there. Here, I'm going to put this away. There's a YouTube channel out there called Red Letter Media. I like watching their stuff. And what they do is they review old B movies and old VHS tapes and so on and so forth. And they one time, kind of in honor of the birthday of VHS, they shot an entire episode, an hour-long episode on VHS. And it was so hard to watch. Just really hard to watch because the VHS quality was just awful. And yet we can do so much better now on our phones. Yeah, the Google Pixel. Yeah, Riley, that's a great one for shooting. Should record a video with 2 cameras. Yeah, that would be kind of cool, right? That'd be kind of cool. You could do a side-by-side of it. But then I got to figure out how to get that thing running. It's not easy. Not easy. Got to find the parts for it and so forth. Okay, let's start coming on back. And we're going to talk early religious attitudes toward business. Okay, let me set the stage for you here. All right? I'm already on stage, but let me set the stage for you. We're talking about the Middle Ages, and we have all this business going on. It's funny, when you studied the Middle Ages in high school, you didn't study business because that's not what we teach, right? Which is why we teach this class. We go to the next level. So there's plenty of business going on in the Middle Ages. It's not all dark ages and wars and kings and queens cutting off heads and pooping in the Thames, okay? There's real business going on. But this made people nervous. Now, there's a reason for this. Back in the day, religion made all the rules. Now, it's going to sound like a religious rant for a moment, but it's not. We're going to wrap around, okay? So hold on. Back in the early days, back in the Middle Ages, religion made all the rules. If you were in Europe, then Christianity made all the rules. If you were Jewish, then Judaism made all the rules. If you were in the Middle East, then Islam made all the rules. So that is where power centralized, okay? This is where power was. It was in religion. And I don't care what kind of religion or anything, there's something about power. And that is power does not like to lose power. So religious teachings and moralities aside, when things would threaten the power base of religion, religion got nervous, okay? And they would respond in different ways. And we're going to talk about the ways they responded. But now I want to bring this to today. You might kind of go, well, Lon, you said this wasn't a history class. Why are we talking about the ways religion responded back in the day? Because let's change religion, the word religion, to prevailing moral sentiment. Prevailing moral sentiment likes to set the rules, and prevailing moral sentiment has feelings about business, sometimes pro, often con. So when we look at all the different ways that religion responded to business, I want to invite you to think of the ways that we practice these same things today, perhaps not because of religion, but because of a prevailing moral sentiment. All right? You'll see what I mean. In most societies, were based on religion. Absolutely. Absolutely. Riley, you are correct. Okay, so here are the things. First of all, we have the ascetic approach, what we would call the ascetic approach. This would say that business is something that must be overcome. We need to escape business. It is unrighteous, and therefore we should have nothing to do with it. Now, I have here a picture of the Amish. This is unfair. The Amish do not have an ascetic approach to business. The Amish know business. They know business very well. They have an ascetic approach to technology that would replace human labor and raison d'etre. Okay, the reason the Amish live as they do is because they want to glorify God in their labor. And it is through their labor that they can express their devotion to God. And so a technology that replaces labor makes no sense to them. Therefore, they have an ascetic response to that sort of technology. Well, many in the day had an ascetic response toward business. We don't have anything to do with business. We're just push it on out. Well, now check this out. I'm going to do the last one there. I know people who refuse to use products that used animal testing. Okay? Sorry, had to get my head straight there for a moment. So there are a lot of products that could be hygiene products, hair products, makeup. It could be medication and so forth. I know people that refuse to use products that involved animal testing. This is an ascetic response toward these products because the idea is prevailing moral sentiment, not religion, says animal testing is wrong, it is immoral, it is torture, and so forth. Therefore, I'm going to have nothing to do with it, right? Yeah, Raphael, try to avoid them as much as possible. I'm with you, right? So this is a supportable thesis. Back when the internet was new, this isn't as much today, but back when the internet was new, I knew many, many, many families that refused to have the internet in their home because they thought the internet would bring about, evil and immoral influences and be a time sink with their kids and so on and so forth. And so no internet in the home. This is an ascetic response to internet in the home because the internet was viewed as a, evil influence. Okay? So think of some things that you might have an ascetic response to. We'll play with this as we go forward. Okay. Now another response that some would have toward business was what was called the indifferent response. And the indifferent response is this. It's saying, listen, there's religion and there's business. These are two separate things. I can be a devout religious follower and I can be a cutthroat business person at the same time. I don't have to worry about it because these are two different aspects of my life. Okay. By the way, Riley says some with TV, some people thought it would bring shame to God or something like that. Yeah, TV is another great example of the ascetic response, right? Of saying we don't have TV in the house. Yes, great example. Coming here to the indifferent, this picture right here, this is Willard Marriott, okay? Marriott. He's the founder of the Marriott Resorts and Hotels. Maybe you've stayed in a Marriott. They're all over the world. They're extremely, extremely successful. Now, Willard, I think his name is Willard Marriott, he was also a Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, devout member from the day he was born to the day he passed away. And it was, in fact, while he was serving a LDS mission in Washington, D.C., that he came up with the idea of starting a hotel chain. Okay, so we have here a very successful business person, hugely successful, who is also a devout disciple of his chosen religion, okay? Now, you know what you can do in a Marriott? You can get a drink, as in alcohol. Mormons don't drink alcohol, but you can buy one at a Marriott. You can also get coffee at a Marriott hotel. Mormons don't drink coffee, but you can buy one at a Marriott. And there, in fact, a Book of Mormon in each one of the rooms, much like the Gideon Bible. Yes. Now, I do not know if this is true. I want to report. I do not know if this is true. However, I suspect that when you're in your room at a Marriott, you can probably order a porn on your TV, a porno, okay? And of course, as a Mormon, Marriott would have nothing to do with porn. Okay, so now why is he doing all this if he's a good member? Because these are two separate things. This is the indifferent response. You've got business and you've got religion. And I can serve my religion here. I can be a savvy business person here. I don't have to worry about the two. Now, before you go off and say, hypocrite, no. Hey, so, do you play violent video games? Oh, well, then you must be a psychopath, right? You must be a killer. No. Listen, there's how I operate in society, which is I do not perpetrate violence upon anybody. And then there's how I operate when playing Grand Theft Auto, which is murder a pimp with a crowbar and steal his car. Okay? Now, I can be a good, solid, moral citizen in this realm, and I can be a amoral sociopath in this realm. Those are two different worlds. Does that make you a hypocrite? I'm not saying you play Grand Theft Auto. I don't know, but I don't know of a video game out there, except maybe Candy Crush, and even then you're crushing candy. But you're killing things, right? Do you espouse environmental issues but still add to the carbon footprint? You drive, maybe you eat meat, you eat fruits and vegetables that are out of season. This adds to the carbon footprint. So does that mean you don't care about the environment? No. Listen, how I care about the environment and what I do in that sphere is one thing. How I live my day-to-day life, I account for as much as I can, but these are separate. These are the indifferent responses, okay? All right, next one, renunciation. Renunciation is when you see business as something to be fought and reformed as part of some ultimate religious revolution. What do I mean by that? I mean, this is when a religion says, okay, yes, we need business. We totally need business, but not the way you're doing it. We're going to do it our own way. And in fact, the way we do it is going to focus on bringing about the kingdom of God on earth. So yes, we're going to do business, but not your way. We're going to do it our way, and it's the way that we think God wants us to do it. Okay? I have here a picture of the United Order. I'm here in Utah, and so the United Order has a history here. The United Order, going once again to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the United Order is how the early church tried to set up their economy. They tried to set it up in Kirtland this way a little bit, but they definitely did here in Utah. This is how ZCMI was set up, which you don't know about anymore. The United Order was, for all intents and purposes, communism. Okay? A commune. The idea is that everybody worked in the United Order, and everybody gave everything they produced to the church, and the church would then reallocate everything produced to everybody equally so that everybody had enough to meet their needs. So instead of buying and selling of goods to meet your needs, it was give everything and then you got everything in return. And this was to bring about a united order. See what I mean? It didn't work for reasons that I think we all understand today. But this is an example of when a religion said, business is cool, but not the way you're doing it. We're going to re-envision it in our own way. Now, once again, were they crazy? No. So how about, let me just, church as a whole is a business. It absolutely is. Let's talk homeschooling for a moment. I don't know if any of you were homeschooled. Okay. I have nieces and nephew that, yeah, Claire, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. I have nieces and nephews who were homeschooled. Homeschool is a form of renunciation. It says, listen, I know my kids need an education. I get it, but not the education that you're serving up. I'm going to provide their own education. And in fact, I'm going to put the emphasis on different syllables. I want an education that focuses on, say, religious attitudes or maybe around social attitudes and so forth. So homeschooling is a form of renunciation. Airbnb and Uber, these are companies that said, yeah, I need a taxi, but not the way you're doing it. Or I need a hotel room, but not the way you're doing it. We're going to do our own and for a different purpose, which is allowing people to make a profit off of their own resources. Do you live at home rather than in an apartment or buying a home? Now, if you listen to society says, oh, you should be in an apartment or you should buy your own home. And you're like, yeah, right. Look at these prices. Give me a break. I would rather live at home and save money for the future than play into this. So I confess I need to live somewhere, but I'm not going to do it the way that you, dear society, says I should. Okay. You know what, Raphael? In terms of and we're now going to hit this button. We're going to hit this. Oh, you guys hit 15 already. Fantastic. You know, the way some homeschooling programs do it differently. The way that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law did homeschooling is that they actually had these groups that they went with in different times in different places. So it provided that social mechanism. So they thought of that. Rentals in our current economy are crazy. Riley, it's not only crazy, it is immoral. I'm going to just, it is inappropriate linguistically for me to apply a moral attribute to an economic reality, but I'm going to anyway. It's just insane how we've screwed up our economy in terms of housing. But we'll talk about that more later. Okay. Last one, folks. The quiet approach. The quiet approach is when a religion, or us, prevailing moral sentiment, is when a religion says, okay, listen. I know we need this, but we're not going to let it run amok. We're gonna regulate this thing, okay? So, for example, something to be tolerated and where possible amended, a necessary ingredient about bringing about the kingdom of God, but one which cannot be allowed to run amok. Here in Utah, the state owns all the liquor stores. This is the state saying, listen, I know we need alcohol. We get it. We need alcohol. And even though this is was a predominantly Mormon LDS state, not really anymore, but nevertheless, the sentiment is there and they don't drink alcohol. We understand we need alcohol, but we're going to make sure that the state owns it all and we're going to regulate it, okay? By the way, Riley says 1 to 3 times the rent plus massive oh my gosh. Yeah, right? And they can get away with doing that because of the housing problem. Modern day examples. Does your family, when you were growing up, not anymore, you're grown-ass adults, but when you were growing up, did your family regulate TV, gaming, or internet time? If so, that's an example of them saying, listen, we know you need games and internet and TV, but not more than 3 hours a day. We're going to regulate that time. My mother-in-law, she hides the chocolate, except on Sundays. So Monday through Saturday, no access to chocolate. But then on Sunday, all the chocolate comes out. So this is my mother-in-law's way of saying, listen, I know you need chocolate, and chocolate's cool, but it should be something special, something that's unique and brings the family together. So we're only pulling it out on Sundays, okay? Let's see, in Highland, Utah, the town voted all stores should be closed on Sunday, even gas stations. Did they really? That's an example of the quiet approach. I'm kind of astonished, though. That's crazy. Yeah, I do my best shopping on Sunday. Although Glover's is closed on Sunday, which is a shame, but I get it. I grew up playing outside, so I'm a bit older than most in this class. Yeah. So, folks, these are the 4 the 4 approaches, attitudes toward business and so forth. And you're bringing up great examples. Here. Yeah. So here's the point. Maybe you follow a religious tradition. Maybe you don't. Okay. But we all practice these different approaches to business because we are all driven by our own individual moral sentiments. And so we will do some things, we won't do other things. We feel fine about doing this. We want to amend this a little bit and so on and so forth. I'm getting to where I won't go through self-checkout anymore. It's really getting on my wife's nerves, and I apologize to her. But I've gotten supremely pissed off at self-checkout lately. And so I am now sort of having an ascetic attitude towards self-checkout. We all do these things. And so just think about how you do and so forth. All right? Okay. So that is it for our 2 readings. By the way, Walmart getting rid of self-checkout. They're getting rid of some of the self-checkout, Raphael. They're getting rid of some of them, and they're opening up some lanes, but it's not consistent yet. So we went to Walmart the other day, and I did see more lines open, but then like a few days before that, I saw fewer lines open. And so they're still trying to dial that in, right? Oh, the tipping culture, right? Yeah, and Cassie, yeah, I refused to use it at first, but now I use it, but now I don't, right? The tipping culture is a great example. I have oh gosh, don't get me started on tipping because, see, here's the problem. Okay. All right, everyone, let me wrap up real quick. We're all done. If you have participated today, send me an email saying, I participated, I was here and I participated. If you did not participate, just give me a quick sort of what you found most interesting today or one of your own approaches toward business or something. Just get yourself in there so that you can then send me an email about participating. What I am now going to do is I'm going to kind of leave the line open, if you will. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, I'm going to stick around. And with that, real quick on tipping, I struggle with tipping because on one hand, I'm actually a heavy tipper. I tip generously for a whole variety of reasons that I won't bore you with, okay? On the other hand, I'm not sure that some of these drive-thrus are doing anything for me that is deserving of a tip, right? And yet I feel the social pressure to tip. So it's really pissing me off. I'm with you. Totally with you. Actually, you know what's so funny, Claire? I am not asking for a tip. I am not asking for a tip, but YouTube allows you to tip, right? Now, I'm not asking for a tip. I'm talking about the process here. I'm talking about the idea. The idea is maybe I have provided something that made this live stream somewhat more interesting than a typical live stream. And if you feel that way, you can give a tip. On the other hand, for me to then, if I were to come out and say, hey, everybody, I know you paid tuition and I know you paid all your course fees, but I'd really appreciate a tip, that just feels dirty to me, right? So, oh yeah, I'm with you. Reminds me of the scene in Reservoir Dogs. Oh, Mary, yes. That is a great scene. Everybody should watch that scene with Steve Buscemi in Reservoir Dogs. Yeah. Thou doth protest. Me think the lady doth protest too much. Oh, nothing like citing Hamlet. Okay. So, yeah, folks, send me that email and you'll be all set. And I'm just going to stick around and reply to these as long as you're here. I like what we learned. Okay, Caden. Oh, good. Caden, I'm glad you're here. Like what we learned about creator of Marriott and how he separated his religious beliefs and business. It's important. Yes, we all do this to some degree, don't we? Yeah, thank you. I'm glad something resonated with you there. Send me an email. All right, we'll see you later, Cassie and Raphael. I appreciate it. And thanks, Jagat and Mary. They probably already dropped off, but I can say thanks anyway. Hey, Riley, we'll see you later. Thanks for participating today. It was awesome. Any questions at all? Okay, and also, one question. I was 10 minutes late. Oh, not a problem. May have answered it already, but I'm a little confused what to do for the assignment discussion due today. It's just like any other discussion. any discussion, right? So in a normal class, they take these discussions and you're just putting it in for anyone to read, right? And anyone to respond to. What I've simply done is I've put you all in table discussion groups so you know who's going to be reading your submission. It's the two people who you're in a group with, probably two others, and you know who you're going to be responding to. So instead of your discussion post going out to the masses, it's now going out to a very small group. So all you have to do is, I forget exactly what the assignment says. I think one of them is saying, hey, just introduce yourself and say hi. And the other one is probably something along the lines of what resonated with you the most over the last few modules and so forth. What did you find most interesting? I think it was something like that. So just treat it like you're at a table with other people. And the question is, so what did you find interesting? It's that simple. Don't overthink it. Participation is what really matters, Caden. I know that was ambiguous, but I hope that helped. Awesome. Good deal. You too. We'll see you later. All right, well, looks like the majority of folks have dropped off. Things have gotten a little quiet there, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, and we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.